All right, hello, good afternoon. I'm Eric Carlson from the ILO. I'd just like to introduce you our panel for this afternoon. We have from the Global Apprenticeship Network GAN, members driving inclusive workplaces, Kathleen Elsig from Head of Strategic Partnerships and Development, GAN, and Jesús Rodríguez, Accessibility Program Lead, Accenture. Thank you very much for being here this afternoon. I just want to mention to our colleagues online, those of you who want to pose questions at the end, we have a Q&A box online. So please feel free to pose your questions there and we'll get to them at the end. Ms. Elsig and Mr. Rodríguez, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric, for the introduction. I'm just going to give this a push off, a kickoff, if you will, but the spotlight is going to be on Jesús in the next 20 minutes. Maybe you've heard Jesús already speak. You were this morning a speaker in the session. All right. But I'm sure he's got so much experience, such a wealth of knowledge that we will be benefiting from his treasure chest of experience over the next 20 minutes as well. Delighted to see you. As Eric mentioned, my name is Kathleen Elsig. I'm with the Global Apprenticeship Network. We are a business-driven, a CEO-led business-driven alliance that was born very much here out of the International Labor Organization, ILO, just a few years ago. If I can just move to the next slide. Okay, I can do it. Our ambition is here. It is to create an equitable future for all segments of the workforce and a sustainable and inclusive talent pipeline for business. Our specific mandate within that remit to achieve our ambition is to accelerate the uptake of work-based learning by businesses as a part of talent acquisition and development strategies. We are delighted to work with some of the world's largest employers. Accenture is one of our star members. We also have networks in 16 countries around the world where we bring together more than 300 businesses from all different sectors across the world. And we're thrilled in all of those networks and with all of our business partners to be able to talk with them and to talk with communities and stakeholders about how we can move forward and progress in creating an equitable future for the workforce and an inclusive talent pipeline through business, for business, through work-based learning programs. With that, I'm going to stop with my little bit. We have a lot of our members who are working on this topic of inclusivity and diversity in the workforce, and they're extremely committed. We heard as well from the session just previously about also collaborations with Accenture and with Microsoft. And this is happening all over the world. These are not just isolated activities. And I'm thrilled, Jesús, that you're here to tell us more about what Accenture is doing. After Jesús's presentation, we'll have a question and answer session. I'm sure many of you will have questions about that. And Jesús and I had a chance to talk very briefly as well in advance. So I got a sneak peek as well of what he's going to be talking about. Thank you. So I'll hand over to Jesús and to his presentation.
Thank you, Kathleen. And don't worry about that. If you, sorry. Okay. Don't worry. You have been attending the meeting that I participated before, because the presentation is going to be a bit different. So in our, sorry. It's not working. Sorry. Is there. Sorry for that. I was saying that thank you, Kathleen, for your introduction. And don't worry, you attended the meeting before the session that we had earlier today, because I was more focusing probably in that meeting in talking about the adoption of the technology, the adaptive technology for people with disabilities. And now I am trying to talk more about the people with disability that is incorporated in our team and how we are working together and how they are integrated in the team that we have in the program, in the accessibility program. So there are a couple of slides that are the same, but the rest are going to be different. So just the first to make a short introduction, similar that I did this earlier today, just for ensuring that, because not all of you could understand who is Accenture. So Accenture is a company focusing, I would say focusing technology, although there are several industries that we are working with in consulting, strategy, operations, but I would say that probably the big percentage of our work is coming from, or our revenues at the end are coming from the technology, right? So we are close to 500,000 of employees that we have currently working in Accenture, split in more than 50 countries, in more than 200 locations, and working for 6,000 clients, and getting partnership with more than 150 different platforms and vendors that we have on that. So this is that means that at the end we have a huge ecosystem that we are working in terms of working in the accessibility in this ecosystem. Going to the next slide. As I mentioned in my meeting earlier today, a couple of years ago, no, I would say 3-4 years ago, we started with from the top leadership with a huge program for collaborative for working in the inclusion and working in the inclusion for people with disability. And at that point, we discovered that we need to adopt our technology and our procedures for ensuring that they were accessible for all the people with disability. When they say people with disability here, I'm talking about the employees with disabilities, because that is the focus. So not for customers, not for clients, it's for employees. So to ensure that our employees with disabilities are able to run their careers into our organization. So that is the objective that we need to adapt, because we need to adapt the procedures and technology. And I think that I mentioned shortly earlier today that this is business at the end. So the reason because we are incorporating people with disability, employees with disabilities in our organization is for business, because there are a lot of, there is a big fight in looking for the talent in the different organizations, looking with people with the skills. And we found that the people with disabilities at the end is a talent niche that we need to get on board. And that is because we have this interest in getting employees with disabilities with the right skills for incorporated into the company, right, into our work. Moving to the next slide. And this is, and one of the recommendations that I mentioned for doing this able is that this need to come from the top level of the organization. That is one of the key messages that I want to say. To get success in this type of I would say programs, we need to get the top involvement for the high leadership. The picture that I am showing here in this slide, so for those of you that cannot see it, is just a meeting that happened in Davos at the beginning of the fiscal year. In this World Economic Forum, there was a session, 1-hour session dedicated to people with disability, business for people with disabilities. In this session, there was several leads from different companies, from Fujitsu, from Bloomberg, from Shares. So there are several of them. And one of them was Julie Sweet, that at that moment, was the lead of CIO for North America. Currently, Julie Sweet is the CEO for Accenture globally. So at that point, when she participated in Davos, she mentioned that she was highly compromised with ensuring that the people with disabilities had an opportunity, we're going to have an opportunity in our company. And now she's the CEO, sorry. That means that he continued being compromised with this objective. And this objective has been marked as a KPI for all her direct reports. And this high report to their direct reports, also the KPIs and so on. So that is the reason, because at the end, in a cascade way, it is coming to all the leads in the organization for ensuring that people with disabilities is a must to do for internally into the company, for ensuring that we can incorporate and hiring people with disabilities at all the levels in our company. That means that, okay, I will talk more about that in the future. So next to the next slide, please. And that is the program that we did for that. So in order to start the program, we understood this as a journey. At the beginning of this journey, we start asking to the people that we had on board. So because I mentioned before that we had around 500,000 people. In these 500,000 people, we could have, I don't know, 3,000 to 4,000 of people with disabilities. The reason for that is because in many countries, there are some rules that are forced to get some percentage of people with disabilities into the organization. And we already have it, and we knew that. And we set up surveys for asking about what were the needs, understand what was in the market regarding that in terms of the technology, in terms of the methodologies to apply, in terms of the criteria, because one of the things that we know is that we don't know anything about accessibility at the beginning, so we can understand that probably we know a lot of things, but when you are starting working on that, you discover the lack of knowledge that you have personally and in the organization. And that is because you need to start thinking about how to start this journey with this knowledge. Then you start to move quickly to say, hey, okay, that is easy to get. So it is easy, don't worry, because we are going to get some people with experience in this area, joining, hiring them, and starting working. So we are Accenture. We can do this in 1 year, for sure. Why not? That is the reality. That is a second problem. Build realistic plans when you try to do things. So, because unrealistic plans are very easy to do and very complex to move to the right way. So here we know more. And this second phase of the program that we had is taking longer than expected, for sure. It's not easy to ensure that all the medium executives in the organization are getting the compromise that the top level has for ensuring that things are happening. We need to convince our providers also for collaborating with us. We need also to collaborate with application teams that are responsible for providing services across the organization for ensuring that they are compromised with the accessibility. And we need to fix the gaps that we have in knowledge around systems, around procedures, around accessibility criteria, about how to run things, right? I have had the experience that in some cases, hiring people with disabilities, they say, hey, I know what accessibility is just because I am disabled, right? And I know perfectly what we have to do. And the reality is that no, you need to be trained, you need to get your skills on accessibility. When I say accessibility, I'm referring to the IT accessibility for ensuring that you are running the things in the right way and consistent way for the future. So that is another thing that we need to take into account and keep consistently. And the other thing that is related to that is that we need to ensure that we mentor, coach, and provide learning to all the medium executives in the organization for ensuring that they understand how to manage the people with disability that are hired into the organization. When I say manage, I'm referring that not doing something different, right? But ensuring that you understand exactly that is as an employee as another, right? So that is not big difference, and you need to manage the people that are coming to organization with another employee, getting similar objectives, similar goals, and getting similar proposals for the future. That is important to say. And for the future is that we are thinking in incorporating new technologies and new procedures for incorporating into this program. Go ahead. What is this one? It's not mine. I don't know. Okay, go ahead. The next. Okay, this is our strategy, the strategy that we are doing. So at the end, what we are planning is ensuring that we have people in all the different sectors that we are involved, that we are involving. So when we are talking about accessibility, we are managing the technology. So we need to have to ensure that we have people with a knowledge for managing the technology, for ensuring that we ensure that all the interactions to the technology are to accessible systems, accessible websites, accessible mobile applications, accessible procedures. So we need to ensure that all of them are moving to the accessible areas. The second is that we need to think we need to collaborate with the designers for ensuring that all the designs are accessible from scratch. When you prepare and you design a new system, new product, new procedure that you are going to manage by the Accenture employees, it has to be accessible for avoiding additional cost or evolution or remediation in the future, right? So you need to be sure that you are building the design, accessible design from scratch. We need also to collaborate with the vendors and with the providers to ensure that they are aligned with our strategy. In this area, in some cases it's difficult. It's difficult because they had some difficulties for getting the value that it is adding to them in order to provide an accessible solution. I have the feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, probably we can discuss about that in many cases when we are talking about products and accessibility, we are thinking in people with disabilities as a customer, as a final customer that is going to acquire or to get a service or a product. But when we are talking about people with disability as an employee, we have more difficulties for vendors, for suppliers to understand that the product that they are putting for an employee or selling for being used for an employee in our organizations has to be accessible. So when talking, I am not talking about Microsoft or some others that are big organizations, are coming from big organizations. I am talking about products that are dedicated to, to manage the scheduling of an organization, to manage the recruiting, to manage the rewards, to manage recognition. So things that in some cases are not so relevant in terms of the final account of the company, financial account of the company, but are relevant for the day-to-day work of the employees. So that is the important thing that we need to take into account. So having a system to declare the hours and expenses that an employee is doing in the day-to-day work, being accessible, this product is important for us, for all the employees, right? For being autonomous in the work that they are doing. However, this could be not relevant for the financials of the organization, but for us it's important. So we need to ensure that the provider that is serving this product to us will have an accessible product that is relevant. So that are the type of things. So, and additionally, we need to collaborate with the I would say content creators, content owners. So there are a lot of people, a lot of organizations, a lot of different corporate functions in our organizations that need to be consistent in the way that they are producing the content, marketing, internal communications, HR, learning. So there are a lot of different groups that need to ensure that all the products and services that they are sending are accessible. I don't know, can imagine the situation for an onboarding process that you prepare all the materials for the guy that that is going to be rolled on into your organization, and you get tons of materials that are not accessible for them. So that is something that we need to collaborate. And finally, we need to also to ensure that we operate everything integrated and ensuring that everything is working, including innovation and including other areas. All this is done by that group that is in the Center of Excellence that are having around 50% of the people with disabilities on board, right? So that is important because at the end, one thing that we are doing is demonstrating that people with disabilities in the organization can add value, because many of these activities that I'm mentioning here are managed by people with disability. As an example, for example, the manager who is leading the remediation of the websites in the organization is a person with disability that is having a huge limitation. Mobility limitation, for example. The lead that is the testing lead for all the websites is also disability. So there are a lot of people in our organization that are demonstrating the value that they are having for doing that. And we are, and in many cases, these guys are coming and are learning in our organization. So we got people from the different colleges or high school incorporated in our organization, and we start working, and they are trained into the organization for providing this value. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the things that we found was the lack of knowledge that we had for doing that. So at the end, they are learning, working directly with us. So for checking more about that, instead of to talk about that, probably is something that they can talk directly. You have the video? Eh? No, it's not the video.
I do. I just need to grab it. Probably off my computer.
Okay, you can check the video. Oops. In the meantime, because we have just 5 minutes, if there is some question, probably could be fine. In the meantime.
Please, any questions? Anyone online? You may pose questions to the Q&A box. If not, we invite anyone from the audience to pose your question. Using the microphone, use the green button, please.
Hi, sir.
Hi.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate, and there's so much that I've acquired from your presentation. And I think in terms of accessibility, I have noticed back in my country that there is quite a lot that needs to be done in terms of making employers understand of what we mean by accessibility. And when we mean inclusion in plus accessibility, what ought to be done about it. Because the tendency that we've got is they will say, you may come, forgetting that their place is not accessible. If they are able to access themselves into the infrastructure, or into the structure, they don't realize that there's someone else who is not able to access that. So I think it needs to be intensified by mainly organizations in terms of advocacy, making employers aware and understand of what the term accessibility is, plus inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a question for you.
Okay.
I have two questions. We had a little bit of a catch up beforehand, and you know, you've gone through a few of the things you really would like people to know. Action needs to come from the top. It needs to be endorsed at the top. You need to build realistic plans, you said. I thought it was very insightful how you said that you need to train and upskill those who are also going to be mentoring and coaching those with disabilities. And you need to train the trainers in some ways, or you know, make sure managers have the training.
Yes.
Now, so my question to you is, now when we leave this room, everybody's got a lot of knowledge. What do you want them to do? And if you walk out the door, what's the call to action to everybody here?
Culture action for everybody, for all the organizations. So I think that the main thing that is, I would say that the main recommendation is to go directly to the top. So that is the way to ensure that things are happening, because we had the previous experiences that we were working by, I would say, by the medium level, working at country level, working at program level, and at the end it is not working properly. The reason for that, at least in our experience, is because there are a lot of different interests from the different organizations that you have in your company, and at the end it's difficult to ensure that all these interests are they are converging in the same topic, right? So you need to be sure that there is a KPIs since the top of the organization that are marking that you need to do this because it is important for me, right? So, and that is the way that at the end things can move. It is not easy, but at least you have some anchor for moving and a hook for moving ahead in this area. Without this top involvement, honestly, I think that is difficult to get this moving ahead, because that is the core. So probably what do we need is to prepare awareness campaigns or whatever other thing for ensuring that this is happening. Because one of the things that we did for moving this from the bottom up to the top level was when we were designing the moving to the new technology, for moving to the new, preparing the digital agenda, we incorporate accessibility as part of the user experience, the employee experience, and we show up this to the leads, and at that moment they detect that it was going to be important for them, and that was between them and some others inputs that they got, they have the impression that it should be important and relevant for them. But you need to get the top compromise.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Elsig and Mr. Rodríguez, for your excellent presentation. Anyone have any more questions after the break? We can do that. We have our next session in about 5 minutes, so we'll set up now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.